Stephen Fry was once asked what he would say to God if he ever met him, and his answer sums up the greatest argument against the very existence of God in just one sentence. Bone cancer in children. What's that about? And it is really compelling. The problem of suffering isn't just the biggest problem that atheists have with God, it's the biggest problem that Christians and agnostics have too. From Fry at one end through Alex O'Connor in the middle to David Bentley Hart on the other. So if God is omnipotent and God knows what's happening and God has the ability to prevent it, then why is there suffering? Why is there evil? God, as Fry puts it, does appear sometimes to be capricious and stupid. Now, I'm not going to try and take that away, the feeling of it, the immensity of it, but I am going to try and give you something new, a new intuition that I've conceived, and it comes partially from understanding what people who have died have told us. But first we have to deal with the God in Fry's question. The argument of suffering as being a reason against God only works if we actually start by assuming God is a concept that holds some form of ontological truth. And I'm stopping short of saying something like there is such a thing as God or that God exists, because my whole point sort of moves beyond that language. If we don't start there, then I think the problem of suffering gets worse, not better. Because without that ontological belief in God, there's no virtue to it, no explanation for it. It simply is the product of the pitiless indifference of this universe in Richard Dawkins' worldview. So let's assume that God is, but the God that is usually pictured by both sides as a sort of omnipotent factory controller, sat in an ethereal control room, pushing buttons and pulling levers. Someone outside the world, watching it happen, with the ability to intervene, but choosing not to. And if we start there, then we're in trouble immediately, because that version of God is derivative of our ability to define it through language. Language is derivative of experience, and if God is, then our experience is derivative of God. So we can't define God in words. We can point, we can stir a feeling, we can maybe experience, maybe, but we cannot describe God like a character in a book. And many traditions realized this a long time ago. Master Eckhart, David Bentley Hart, Advaita Vedanta, and every other non-dual and monistic tradition, and even the Christian mystics. Now what they say is that God is not one more thing that exists in the category of objects. God is the ground of being. God is what existing is. But what does this understanding of God have to do with the problem of suffering? Well, since the advent of acute cardiac treatment, we've been able to bring people back from literal declared death. And across many thousands of near-death experiences, there's one stage people describe again and again, and it's called the life review. The thing that makes it strange is not that they see their life flash by, it's the perspective from which they see it. Most NDEs start with a sense of ego death, of just pure awareness. But during the life review, people don't experience their life as themselves, they experience it from the point of view of every person they affected, not just the people they interacted with, everyone they affected. They feel what those people feel. They aren't separate from them. They are them. And now if you're skeptical of NDEs, that's fair enough. I'm not asking you to accept this as evidence of anything, just hold the shape of it, how it feels, because it is a report from ordinary people of what it's like to experience someone else's suffering from the inside rather than watching it from the outside. And if that's starting to feel a bit abstract, then think about this metaphor. Think of a television screen. You look at the image and it clearly has some sort of design. So you assume there's someone sitting behind it doing the designing, making the screen change, separate from the screen itself. But the screen is just light coming out through every single one of those pixels, and you can't separate the two. The light isn't watching the image, the light is what the image is made of. And so let's start with the idea that God is the light, not the one holding the remote. And then let's put those two ideas together. God is what everything is. If the kingdom of heaven is within all of us and God underlies all of it, then every time any conscious perspective suffers, that suffering isn't being observed from outside the screen, from a distance, it's also being experienced by God. If every pixel in the screen feels pain, then the screen feels all of it. And that's what the life review is a report of, not watching someone else's pain, but being inside it. Now imagine that at the scale of everything that exists, billions and billions of perspectives, all human consciousnesses, potentially animal consciousness, whatever else is out there having an experience, all of it funneled into one awareness at once. But here's where it really can flip our perception. Some serious theories of consciousness, the kind that Giulio Tononi and Philip Goff work on, hold that a more integrated system of ever more complexity carries a greater depth of experience, a different level of awareness. And what if therefore God is the very apex of our integrated complex system, something that we cannot possibly even conceive? Well, in that case, suffering isn't observed separately, it's felt exponentially. And suddenly the Son of God experiencing almost the worst suffering imaginable in front of all of us feels less like the story about one man and more like an insight into the whole scheme of things. I'd argue potentially we're all the Son of God as a metaphor, given this version of God isn't a thing with offspring. And that version of Christianity works pretty much in line with so many other wisdom traditions and metaphysical schools too. But that begs the question, why therefore would suffering be allowable at all if God feels it more than we do? Well, we can't know that, but we can know that without suffering, this temporal existence would be something else entirely. Try and imagine a world with literally no suffering. Well, first, it assumes that no free will can exist. So you're back to this robotic determined life run by potentially the capriciousness of that factory controller. And it also means no sense of comparison in our experience. There's no joy without sadness, no relief without pain, no love without anger. And that doesn't make suffering something we can just shrug off. But a reality without it probably isn't something we can conceive or understand. However, those people that have had near-death experiences or deep meditative states or out-of-body experiences do seem to describe a different type of reality, one without that charge of suffering running through it, which suggests that suffering might not be a fact about reality. It might just be a feature of this particular mode of it. Some traditions imagine life as a curriculum and suffering a function of that. And Bernardo Kastrup, in his analytical idealism, argues that life is consciousness just becoming aware of itself in every conceivable way, which would mean we have to include suffering. And this may even explain the necessity of death. Imagine an eternity in which suffering is experienced over and over with no end to it. At some point you'd say, I would rather not have this experience. Instead, we get these brief moments of this type of experience, of life here together, which is, as many traditions suggest, the illusion and not the reality. So suffering is potentially necessary, experienced in its totality by God in an exponential sense, very, very temporary, and eventually relieved. Now, evil is the second problem, and my feeling on it is nuanced different. I think it has all the same temporary, all felt, necessary from free will reasoning, but we can deal with evil much closer to home. A lot of non-religious and religious people might call themselves humanists, and humanism starts from one simple premise. It's the almost exact counterpoint to the doctrine of original sin. Now, I've been training as a counselor, and to work as a person-centered counselor, you have to start from a humanistic position, that everyone is born inherently good. That's the starting assumption. And what follows from that is that a person is born good and given safety, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met, and there's no abuse and there's good teaching, then that person will grow up wanting to alleviate the suffering of people around them. So when you recognize evil in the world on this view, it isn't something this person was born carrying. Usually you can tie it back to some form of abuse, but it's also about environment, parenting, brain chemistry, because for some people the world is really difficult to access. Some people live in the world we've created and every single day is hard for them because of the way it's set up, not because of something that they can choose. Now, we don't know if the humanist model is right, but most people who claim that evil is a reason to doubt God would also claim that the humanistic framework is true. So it's either that evil is innate in certain people's character, which is much closer to original sin, and I dispute that, or we're given this blank canvas of innate potential goodness, and the world we inhabit in corrupts that. Now, the latter is true. We have to give up free will for that to stop. And there's one more thing that the fully secular account leaves sitting on the table. If this existence is just survival and nothing else, we should have very little barrier to hurting other people for our own benefit, denigrating them, using them. That's what a strictly utilitarian, nihilistic reading of human beings would actually license. And some, nihilistic philosophers do actually say that this is true. But this isn't how most ardent nihilists live. Murder, abuse, even mockery of someone else's suffering is rare, because we actually wince at the thought of it. We do actually try and end suffering we have no stake in ending, which means we're claiming constantly to know what it feels like from the inside. Someone else is suffering, and animals are strangers. Empathy appears to be like a portal into our collective awareness. It's almost like our awareness already has some sense of what that life review is going to be. Look, this is one of the hardest questions, if not the hardest question in all of theology and ethics, but this logic makes sense to me, and if it makes sense to you, then great. I'm not claiming to know any better than anyone else. My aim is just to always try and open myself up in the hope that that helps someone. But if we are all God, and God is in all of us, then it seems obvious to me that love is the answer, and treat thy neighbor as you wish to be treated might just be the best possible response to suffering that there is. Now, if you like this video, thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out this video here, and I'll see you on the next one.